details, information. I'm so glad you brought this up because we all want to save Dallas County, we all want to save Texas, and we all want to save our United States of America. And we don't have a lot of time, so we need to get stuff done. I'll say that nicely. We need to get stuff done. Okay, Kevin. So you want to go to slide number 1 here. Okay, why do we need to secure our elections? I feel like I am preaching to the choir in this room, right? 69% of Republican voters do not trust our elections. 52% of all voters are concerned about our elections. I would say that those numbers would flip-flop before Trump was in office. You know, as Trump was elected, probably the Dems, it was a high percentage of the Dems that were saying this, so it really depends on which side is in office at the time. Securing the primary can attract independent voters by setting Republicans above, by securing our primary. And let's talk some details about that. Okay. So, why? First of all, our current machines are not legally certified. Are you guys aware of that? Our machines are not legally certified anywhere in Texas. We are voting on illegal machines.
Thank you.
Secondly, we have lots of questions about mail-in votes. If you guys have seen 2,000 Mules, if you haven't, watch it. And I don't need to go
It was right on X this weekend, and I forgot to watch it.
We have known issues with Dallas with the e-poll books jumping in 2022. Hopefully all of you guys are aware of that. If you're not aware, is anyone not aware of what happened with e-poll books or what those e-poll books are? Okay, and I'm going to give you access to all of this.
Oh, you are.
You are going to have more information than you ever need. Okay, there was a lot of questionable behavior at Central Count. There are thumb drives that were not locked up. There are doors that were not locked. There were cameras that went off that were supposed to be on. There were people that were locked out of rooms that were supposed to have visibility into those rooms that were locked out of those rooms. I could probably go on and on and on and on. There was a chain of custody issue, always are chain of custody issues with ballots that are, and they're not counted as they're required to by law. So I will just speak firsthand. I spent hours at Central Count doing an audit. The audit was after the municipal elections last year, where you're supposed to go and they randomly select different precincts, and they count the ballots in those precincts for who, how many, and I spent hours tallying. And at the end I said, okay, great, we have the numbers. Let's true that up to what was on the thumb drive and what was actually counted. Oh no, we don't get to do that. I'm like, how is this an audit? Like, it doesn't take a dummy to know this is not an audit. Okay, so this is what we're dealing with in Dallas County specifically. Okay, so you can't eat. Okay, did you know that the Texas election code requires each party to decide how their primary is run? Have you guys ever been asked how you want your primary to be run, or was that decided for you? I know I wasn't aware that there was a joint primary that was decided last year, but I don't think that anyone was involved in that decision. It was just decided for us. So the actual election code is listed here, Chapter 123, under Title 8, is the adoption of acquisition of voting system, Subchapter A, the adoption of the voting system, and Section 123.001, adoption of the voting system required, says, for primary elections, the county executive committee of the political party holding the primary. That means us. If you're, well, whoever you are, if you're a Republican or a Democrat, you get to decide if you're on part of the county election committee, or county executive committee, how you want your primary to be run. This is not a one-person decision. This is not a head of the party decision, not a head of the county decision. This is the county executive committee. Who is that committee? Our precinct chairs. Okay? All right, so I just want to call notice that the head of DCRP, Jennifer Stoddard-Haju, has said many times publicly, and she wrote a blog post. This is the blog post right here. You can click it if you'd like to read the blog post specifically. In her exact words, she said many times in this article that she believes we need to get rid of machines and we need to go to paper ballots. This is a link right here to that article if you'd like to read it for yourself. I'm not going to take her words for her. You can read her own words. Okay, so a week ago, my days are long, my weeks are short, right? The RNC put out a resolution to return to excellence in American voting and elections, and this was basically saying we got to get rid of machines. We got to get rid of them. So this is the entire country Republican National Committee is saying this, okay? Okay, this is a resolution that was put forward that was just mentioned last Saturday about exactly what we want to be done in Dallas to have the machines removed for this primary. I'm going to be very clear right now. This is not the November election, but the primary that's in March. And this is specifically just talking about the confidence. There's no confidence on our elections. It's extremely expensive to contest the results if you have an issue. And I'm working with several candidates actually on the Democratic ticket who filed lawsuits of contests in the very last election because there was so much fraud in the last election. This is completely bipartisan, by the way. This is not just Republicans. Dallas County does not provide voters with a reliable audit trail. We know this, we just mentioned this. The lack of reliable audit trail has led to a lot of issues where our voices are not being heard within our party. Election workers are not being listened to. We're put in rumor control on the election website. This is a rumor. Yeah, we have video. It's not a rumor. We got proof. Okay. Election code requires that Texas voting systems provide voters with an audit trail. I just mentioned that. We got no audit trail. And that vote center-based counting destroys the precinct-based election, which basically, right now we have county-wide elections, and that is a massive problem because in order to know if someone has voted in one precinct and then went to another, there has to be a digital poll book where they check in. It has to be connected to the internet to see if that person is voting in other precincts. Otherwise, you wouldn't know. So this is a major, major issue. By the way, all this stuff is novel. Like, we didn't do this 20 years ago. Like, and our elections ran just fine, right? Like, before we had these machines, we always voted on paper. It was always counted. So this is not new. This is not novel. We're going back. All right. So what we're asking now is that per that code, section 123.001, that the executive committee selects the voting system, which we choose to be following the Chapter 65 manual count. And I'm going to go into more detail. I'm going to go into more detail about Chapter 65 in just a second. This is super, super important that you memorize Chapter 65. Okay, Elections Department is obligated to contract with parties to perform elections. So the parties get to decide how it's done, not the election administrator in Dallas County. This is our decision, not his. And by the way, he's supposedly said to Jennifer that he will move heaven and earth to do whatever the party wants to have it done. That's what he told her, and that's what she told us. Okay, Republican Party has a unique opportunity to restore Republican voter confidence. We know it is an all-time low. People just aren't even voting anymore because they know that their vote doesn't matter and it doesn't count. It's a problem. So be it resolved that the Republican Party, in unison with the National Republican Party, Return to Excellence in American Voting and Elections resolution hereby resolves to manually tabulate its March 2024 primary election results in accordance with Texas Election Code Section 12001A, B, 2, and Chapter 65. Also, that paper poll books be printed for each precinct, fixed 30 days before the election period, to be used during early voting and election day in geographically consolidated precinct-only voting. I'll get into that detail in a minute. And be resolved that the Dallas County Republican Party will hire sufficient staff to prepare for a well-executed, manually tabulated primary and provide the publicity needed to educate voters that the primary election will be in precinct-based and not voter center-based as provided by the Election Code Chapter 173. Be it resolved that Texas County Republican Party will hold a separate, not joint, primary entirely apart from the Dallas County Democrats. Okay, that's the resolution that was put forth on Saturday by Serena's team, which I am a part of, Tammy is a part of, Bob is a part of. Who else is here that isn't? Kevin and Mary are a part of. Okay, and then Tammy, because I don't work on Saturday. I turned my phone off on Saturday. I observe Shabbat, so I did not get to go to the meeting on Saturday. Unfortunately, really wanted to be there, although I'm sure they would have tried to catch me out as well. Anyway, I was not there, and so as soon as I turned my phone on and saw what went down, I was like, they are delaying this because they want to sign a contract for the machines before we get this voted on. This is what's happening, okay? I'm being very blunt. No one can hire or fire me, so there you go. I'm just saying it as it is. I'm a dangerous woman.
Pretty good one.
So Tammy was brilliant and put together a resolution basically stating that it is illegal for the party chair to decide how she wants our elections to be run without a vote from the CEC. They cannot sign a contract without a vote from all the precinct chairs. Okay, So she put that in place to like give us a breath. So hopefully they don't do anything shady. So Nate Tammy's here, and Serena's here.
But will they try to bring it forward to the CEC on Monday night to say, we want to hire XYZ company to do the election without, because this resolution won't even be heard until the resolution committee meets in October though, right?
Even if it's not heard, we have legal grounds now to sue our own people, just FYI. And by the way, that's already in the works. We're not playing anymore. You break the law,
Notification has been
you pay
made.
the price. What'd you say?
Notification has been made.
Notification has
Been made.
Has been made. Notification has been made. Absolutely. And Serena walked in. I want to give huge kudos to Serena. I just put the pretty slides together and behind the scenes doing whatever I can do. Okay, next one. Okay, what is the process? So we're kind of alluded to this a little bit. So there has to be a resolution. We have yes. In theory, there needs to be a resolution. And the resolution has been submitted for paper ballots. And then there needs to be an approval of the county executive committee, and then we have to come up with the exact plan of action. I'm going to talk about the plan that we've already put together. There's only so much we can do without the digital resources that come from the Dallas County election administrator, so I will discuss that in a second. If you would like to read the election code in chapter 65, you will have access to this. And by the way, y'all are going to have access to this entire presentation with an action item at the end. Okay, next. Okay, logistics. First of all, we need to create a sense of community. We got to go back to like, grab your neighbors, let's go vote together. Like right here in my hood, like let's do it together. Let's involve the public in counting. How about everyone gets eyes on it? Come see, if you don't want to count, sit and watch. Let's have a party, let's have cameras everywhere, let's stream it everywhere. Everyone watch, it's completely transparent. Novel idea, right? Okay, so we gotta streamline the process, we gotta plan for that. We gotta allocate resources efficiently. We have to have accurate and secure voter rolls. Anyone aware of what's happening with our voter rolls being inflated and messed with? And, oh, we got rid of Eric, but now we have a new digital one, and I'm sure that's super safe. Legally prescribed hand counting. This is super, super key. Chapter 65 tells us exactly how to count these ballots. We have training videos. We know how to do this. This is already part of the law. We're not reinventing anything. This is how it's done. We don't need any approval. We don't need any legislation. It is done. It is ready. Can I make that any more clear? Did I drive that home well? Okay.
Are the hand counters volunteers or people?
Hand counters can be hired or volunteers, both. And we have plans of actions to gather volunteers from all over the community. And I'm going to talk about numbers in a second of how many we'll need. We're going to get into that very shortly, actually really close. And utilizing chunks. Okay, got that. Okay, so this is just to give you an idea. So what these numbers are is, now this is super confusing because they keep changing our precinct lines and adding precincts and moving precincts, so it's a little complicated on the back end. So in the end, those of us who delved into the numbers in preparation for this resolution went through basically what was the most accurate from a precinct level. Then we looked at historical voting for general elections, primary elections, elections that had a presidential candidate on the ballot elections that didn't have a presidential candidate. How did those numbers vary? How did the early voting vary from election day voting? We have looked at it all, okay? Just want to be clear. We're not just throwing spaghetti on a wall. We got numbers.
When you say they keep changing our precincts, who does that?
The Dallas County commissioners, I think it's every 5 years they can change it. 10 years? Sorry, I lied. Thank you for keeping me honest. Every 10 years, Okay, so this is just a breakdown of the 4 districts in Dallas County, and these numbers that you see here are the 2022. Yes, thank you. We're at 23 right now. I was thinking we're 22 for a second. 2022 primary election, because then we could have exact precinct numbers that are the current precincts, because they just changed over in 2022. They were new, so that was the easiest way for us to look at the numbers. And then we looked at historically of what was like the maximum amount of voters we've had basically in the last 20 years. And so we took the 22 numbers and we quadrupled them. We've never had voting that high, but we're gonna just prepare for a Black Swan event because everyone is so dang excited for paper ballots that people are gonna come out in swarms. So we are gonna be prepared for them with a big smile on our face and our pencils ready to tally, right? Okay, so these were the numbers when we quadrupled the 22 numbers from the primary. And so these are great numbers that Serena put together yesterday. I'm giving all the credit where it's due. So in 2020 election, we needed 17,520 man hours, which is the easiest way to calculate because people can volunteer for shifts and we can split up the shift length. So this is the easiest way to think about how many people we're gonna need. If someone wants to volunteer for 12 hours, great, but if someone only wants to volunteer for 3, we'll take you, right? So 2022, we needed 17,520. With what we're doing, and I'm going to explain that in a second, we will only need between 89,22 and 11,952, way less than before. So when someone says this is going to be more expensive, baloney. We're also not paying for the machines. This is going to be, and think about how many people are just going to volunteer because they just want to do their dang civic duty. We don't even need to pay these people that legally are allowed to be paid, but I'll forfeit, just let me count, right? Do you have a question? How do you calculate that? Serena, you want to talk about how to calculate?
Yeah, and these are sort of round numbers, but what the big thing people need to know is, let's
Serena,
say.
you want to come up?
She won't put you on the spot whether you want to or not.
Yeah. Good thing I'm presenting.
Sadly, I have some of these numbers off the top of my head. That's how exciting my life's been recently. So I can cite an example. In 2020, which is presidential election, okay, there were 45 early voting locations. And that was over 11-day period. So anyway, out of that 11-day period at 45 locations, there were 16 instances of 0 voters showing up. 0, 0, 0. 4 people, a minimum, which is what's required by law, sat there all day, 12-hour day, to register no voters. Now, I don't have the number off the top of my head. I think it was about 30-some instances of less than 4 people coming in. I do know that if you take the 45 and you have it on 11 days, it's 495 units, if that makes sense. 277 of them had less than 4 voters an hour that went through. You know, they're basically, when you do early voting, and unfortunately we haven't talked about this, I think we have to figure out how to do it because we don't actually control whether it's in precinct or not. But we still think that people go to just major polling centers, you know, and just other ones, I don't know why they have them. So anyway, over 277 of the 295 had less than 100 voters that day. I've sat all day in dead election deals, and I don't care whether they pay me or don't pay me. I don't know if you've ever volunteered for a job and they don't really need you, you know, and you're doing it for the right reasons. That's kind of what we're trying to eliminate. So those are kind of the numbers.
No, I was just want to chime in. I didn't mean to take the mic from you. Just FYI, when Serena says there's 4 or less voters in a primary in the election, and there's 4 election volunteers that are working the election, who do you think those 4? Who do you think those 4 votes are from when there's 4 people working there?
Those 4.
So would they be 0 actually if those people were working
They
there?
voted the day before. So
Gotcha. Right.
It's such a waste of resources.
It is a waste of resources.
So much, right, from what
So-
we already have.
I can't remember if I put the final numbers in here. No, go back up one for me. Just one up one. So it's okay. You can leave it here. I thought I might have put the numbers in here, but I yesterday and the day before were really crazy. But I just wanted to explain that we consolidated the contiguous precincts to come with the numbers that we had, and how we consolidated is we Serena had maps printed out, huge maps, and we wrote down by hand the quadrupled number from 2022 in every single precinct. And then we grouped precincts that were contiguous that had no more than 2,500 votes together. So we drastically reduced the amount of polling places, and we get to decide, not the commissioners, not JWP, we get to decide how many, you're gonna catch my reference there.
Okay.
For the primary.
When you keep saying we and they and them, please identify.
We being the party, we being the party,
The party.
county executive committee and who they represent.
Not we, the precinct chairs?
The precinct chairs who are there to represent their
Or the
people,
party.
yes, yes.
Okay. And also, didn't this change when, and I'm asking questions because I'm getting from all sides, okay? Didn't this change when they stopped having the people voting at each precinct, and by opening the voting to, you can vote any place, open voting like that, didn't that change through legislature? And how can you, and then wasn't
Yeah,
there?
but that's actually what makes our elections illegal, is the equal vote. No part of the election voting system is allowed to be connected to the internet. There is no way for there to be countywide polling without connection to the internet. The e-poll system is part of the election voting system. Anyone tells you differently, look at their diagram. Look at their diagram on how to vote. It's impossible to vote without it. It is part of it. Serena, I'm sorry, you had.
Well, no, I was gonna say, the law reads that they're countywide voting and the commissioners can or may, offer countywide voting. That's one of the things, but the next is the party, and by that, the precinct chairs. They are the ones that not only say what voting system they want, but they also, when you consolidate districts, when you don't offer it, they're the ones that put out the locations, that say, and I'm talking about locations as being in the general area. I'm not talking about this church or that school. That has to be worked out.
Right.
And then just the way we came up with that number.
Do you want to come back up?
No, I think
I want to
yeah,
repeat because I'm recording, because there are a lot of
yeah.
people who wanted to come that couldn't make it, so I'm just gonna repeat. Let me repeat what you just said for the recording. So, the election code says you may, and by law,
Commissioners may.
the commissioners
But
court,
they don't-
yes,
But they don't control the primary.
exactly.
That's the thing.
Primary is only controlled by the party,
Republicans
general election is different.
are in the driver's seats just for our party, which makes sense. Why do we have someone else, a Democrat telling us how to run our party? It's the Republicans. So if we can't do this, we have no one to blame but ourselves, period. Okay, all right.
I just want to be really clear with legal wording. When the law says may, that means it's optional. When the law says shall, that means it is mandatory. I just want to be really clear when you read an election code, and that's how it works with all legal documents.
And then the last thing is, so we came up, when we consolidated, we looked at what we thought would be the anticipated votes, not the number of votes in that precinct, but the anticipated number of votes that were going to be cast. It's a guess, but we used 20 years of historical data. We tried to shoot for the fences so we don't get caught short. And we used the number 2,500 because we found on early polling, early voting, which still listed by area, that they could process 2,800 43 or something like that through. So we made that 25 as an anticipated. So we feel comfortable with those groupings, like we're not gonna have a mob scene in a mile-long line. That's kind of.
I want to give a couple of more specifics just so you know. So we said that there's going to be we grouped the precincts by 2,500. No early votes can be counted until election day. So on election day, as soon as the polls, I think it's an hour actually, officially after the polls open, we can start getting our volunteers or election workers, whichever they may be, to start counting all the election day votes. So by the time you get to the end of election day, all your early voting has already been counted. Our estimation is it'll probably take 3 groups of 4 to count ballots at a time. Now, however long their shifts are, that's up to them, however we divide that. Those are the details these are minor details, but these are the few details that need to be decided. So the early voting is counted by the end of election day. At the end of election day, then you start counting election day votes, and I think you have 24 hours to do that. Yes, 24 hours to do that.
Well, and I think that really what we need to decide when we get down to the final, it would be wonderful to do the last, to start counting at 7 o'clock. But realistically, particularly since it's our first time doing this, we may want to start counting at 8 o'clock everywhere. Or, in my mind, I'm thinking, say we do it at a school and, they got a nice cafeteria with all the tables and everything set up there, that we started at 1 o'clock. We just have to work the hours and the numbers. And you're talking about, I don't know what you said before, there are a couple ways, the numbers of volunteers, and it is a shocking number when you look at it, and I'm just gonna go ahead and say this out.
Come up here.
Okay.
Come, Tammy, come.
Is there by law that you have to have the count by a certain time?
Yes.
I thought it was by
Yes.
7 o'clock.
7 o'clock the following day.
But there's no criminal offense. Just to be clear on that, there is absolutely no criminal offense.
I think there's a fine.
There's no
and there
penalty.
is
Think
no-
what's happened in our primary, not just our primary, but other elections. There've been weeks before the vote's been counted. Do not worry about that.
You look good, Serena.
Yeah.
Do you want to just shut? I don't know.
Okay.
I wanted to get them to stand.
In doing my math, when you count, you have to have 3 talliers that are all tallying the exact same thing. So your team has to have 3. In a perfect world, your teams, and we would set it up, would be teams of 4. One person just a counter, and the other 3 are talliers.
Reader.
Caller.
Caller, whatever you want to call it, for the team of 4. So we did it numbers with 4 talliers, everyone working 3-hour shifts. Came up with the 3-hour shifts. We've been working with Beverly Foley out of Denton County, and she's the hand count. She does a lot of audits and stuff around the states. People call her. She's a wonderful woman. So anyway, she said, 3 hours is really so perfect for just your average counter. 3 hours, they can stay engaged, they can keep it going. So we're like, okay, at 3 hours, well, that's a lot of people, a lot of shifts. And I do think we're gonna have overwhelming interest in counters. And one of the gray areas is the training. Now, not that I'm that quick of a study, but I was trained for about 2 minutes, with Beverly, and picked it up right away. And the thing is, it's got checks and balances in it the way it's set up. So.
Sorry, I'm imitating
Yeah,
how
I know.
training goes.
But, there's not a lot, you count to 5. We really shouldn't have a lot of, training involved in it. But we should have some to kind of weed out and see who these people are. And also remember too, we are working against the clock. Speed is not everything. Accuracy obviously is important, but we do need people that are gonna stay focused. We don't need the person that comes in half lit.
A camera over each.
Yes.
I think that is what we want to ask for. It says nothing about it in the law. Here is my take, if I ruled the world. There are cameras at Central Count where they're counting. There should be cameras at and we won't at everything, but there need to be cameras there. I think last Saturday, when I was trying to figure out where Matt Patrick, the expert on all this, was coming from, there was a recent count in Arizona, I can't tell you where, and it had the number of and I was like, how did these people are that slow in Arizona? What is it? I don't know what system they were doing, but they had a watcher for each person. So doubling everything you do, there was an eyes on you. So that was part of it. And I thought, well, okay, I still thought they were slow. But you really got to look and see how things are being done.
It averages, depending on how many, what do you call it?
Races.
Content races there are on each ballot, it averages about 1 minute per ballot.
Yeah, we do it a little bit less than a minute. And there, talked with a woman in Fredericksburg, and this is That's another way to think about it. You think about I say precincts, the in-precinct consolidated. Think about them as a small town. It's your neighborhood. And we're grouping them like that. So we're like, oh, you can't do it in a big city. Well, we have 100 little small towns that we're doing it. It's really so simple. But I was talking to the woman in Fredericksburg, and they do their municipal races. And all right, granted,
On paper.
and you have to when you hand count. And I'm working my way down the list of all the smaller counties that do it. But she was a great example. They come in the next day. They don't bother with it that night. They come in. She said, I guess we get started about 9:30, and of course, and we're done by 11:30, and we go to lunch. And granted, it was 2 races. And they were open seats. Do you count that as 1 or 2? I don't know. They had 2 candidates. But their rate, and I kind of figured, okay, it took you 2 hours, and people. It was like 77. And people are getting those from 60 to maybe 95. And again, it depends. And that's up with like 20 races. We'll probably have a little over 20. And also by races, the Republican Party will put propositions on that they never follow, that's okay, they ask you to vote on them anyway, and those all have to be reported. So that's kind of what we're talking about.
And I will always be Pollyanna, but what happens when you have a bigger county that you have more votes to count? You have more people to count them too. That's amazing, right? I mean, we're in a big county, so we can find a lot of volunteers to count. We got even high schoolers can volunteer, so it's really cool. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, put that in perspective, it's like the 1776, the 1%ers, numbers comes out perfect for Dallas. So, there are those kind of people there.
So you're saying that number one, you can consolidate the precincts, even though the current way is having open voting, and that the legislature or
That's the county commissioners that decided that, not the legislature. Yes.
the county
And all it says
commission-
is they have to be contiguous. That's what the law says.
Okay,
You can
there's
group it.
no minimum requirement for, this debate. So
Bob, did you?
We may not be able to do that.
Let's let Ally get through with her presentation.
Yeah, so let me just wrap this up and then we can open it for questions, just because there's people that couldn't come that I promised I would record, even though it's super awkward. Okay, so this is your call to action. First of all, how many people in this room right now are precinct chairs? Can we count on you to support this? Okay. I'm not going to get controversial, but Chapter 65 is the only legal way for us to move forward. So I just want to be really clear. There's not another way that we can do this without legislation. We ain't got time for that. Okay? So we either support this or we don't get paper ballots in March. That's how I see it. I'm a pretty clear-cut gal. I would love for every single one of you guys to scan this. If you are not a precinct chair, what this has is a link to this presentation digitally. It has a link to the resolution. It has verbatim, copy and paste wording for you to message your precinct chair with a link to find your precinct chair on the DCRP website. If you cannot find it there's also an email for Tammy who can get you that email. This is so easy. I encourage you to share this with everyone you know and have them do the same thing. I will be doing that myself. I hope to see our chats. All these chats we're in, blowing up with this little link here. Okay, it's the landing page with all the info. Okay, that's it. You want to stop the recording? Then we can open. Oh, Tammy, do you want to say something?
Yeah. So here's the thing. I want to encourage everybody here that we have been working on paper ballot voting for over 2 years. There's been a group of us that have been surveying, and I work with Missouri and Arizona. They have a system in place. We have a 300-page manual already that was just outlined for us that they did in Arizona and Missouri. It has been tried true. This is not a new harebrained idea. There's a few details that we need to work out 100%, but the format's in place. We even have a soft contract knowing what the Dallas County Election Department requires, what Section 65 requires. So do not let the idea that it's too hard, we don't have the time, it's not been done before, do not buy into that lie. Because it has been. I work very closely with Linda Rance of Cause for America. Mike Lindell's team can come in and help train because they've done this system before. We have training videos to assist us. So again, when we ask for a call of action to support this resolution, I wanted, this is not recording, correct?
This is recording.
Okay, could you turn the recording on?